Hello! Welcome to the telling of a Norse tale. Today I will be telling the tale of gods and giants, deception and mystery. Today we tell the tale of two brother gods, Loki and the mighty Thor, who did battle in feats of strength and wits against the king of the giants himself. So without further ado, on with the story. Thor and Loki did one day take leave of Asgard for the towering heights of Utgarda, home the king of the giants, amid a cruel wasteland of Jotunheim. Coming late one night to the earth, to a lowly hut, the two gods were warmly received by a small family, noble in spirit, yet desperately poor. Unable to afford meat, the hosts offered a vegetable soup, not knowing that their guests were something more than ordinary travelers. Taking pity on them, Thor slaughtered Tangskrisnir and Tangirashostur, the two goats which pulled the thunder god's chariot through the sky, asking that they spare the skins and bones. Thor and his company have their merry feast, although Gunther, the son of the host's family, secretly snapped one of the bones of the goats so that he could acquire the marrow. Waking next morning, Thor strides over to the remains of his loyal goats and waves Mjolnir, the famous hammer of Thor, over the bones. The goats were no mere earthly goats, for at the Thunderer's command they returned to life, ready to serve their master once more. The god, however, soon noticed that one of the goats was lame in one leg, since his bone had been broken by the boy the night before. Rounding on the family in fury, Thor took along Gunther on his journey as repayment. When night fell once again on their journey, the travelers chanced upon a strange hall in the wilderness. Doors as wide as the walls, possessed of many passages leading into it, the gods made camp for the night. Their sleep was not easy, broken by loud roars and tremors in the earth. Uneasy, Thor left the hall early in the morning and walked into the light. To his shock, he saw what had caused the noises in the night, a vast giant, sleeping in the forest. Turning back, he realized that the strange hall his kin had slept in was in fact the giant's glove, so mighty in stature was he. Roused from his slumber, the giant introduced himself as Skrymir and offered to guide them to Utgarda, even offering to carry their provisions for them. The gods agreed, but believed that the mighty Jotun was not hostile. Night fell once more, and Skrymir began to snore loudly once again. Thor turned to their bag for provisions, desperately hungry. To his rage, the giant had tied the knot tight, too tight for the god to undo. The snoring bored into their heads all night until the Thunderer could tolerate it no longer. Taking up Mjolnir, Thor smote down upon the middle of his crown, the mighty talisman which had conquered so many foes and laid bare so many citadels. The blow should have slain the giant outright. Skrymir raised an eyelid for a moment, thinking a leaf must have fallen upon his head, before once again falling asleep. Growing angry once more, Thor raised his hammer high and smote the giant once again. "An acorn must have fallen on me," spoke the weary Skrymir. Enraged, Thor drew upon all of his strength and smashed mighty Mjolnir onto the giant's skull. Skrymir sat up, bidding good morning to Thor. He explained that there must have been some birds sleeping in the trees above him, for he thought he felt twigs and dirt fall upon him in his sleep. Telling the gods that they were almost there, Skrymir ran ahead to prepare welcome for them, his massive frame soon carrying him to Utgarda. At last, reaching the mighty fortress, Thor, Loki, and Gunther crept through the grating into the vast hall, whereupon they were welcomed by Utgarda Loki, king of the Jotun and master of Utgarda, proclaiming loudly how puny Azir were compared to the Jotun. The giant king challenged the gods to beat them at any event. Loki, the trickster, stepped forward, boldly claiming to be able to out-eat any amongst them. Nodding in assent, Utgarda Loki sent forth the giant Logi to challenge him. A vast banquet was laid and set in a trough, and the match began. Giant and god ate quickly and soon met in the middle of the trough. Having devoured all of his food, Loki felt sure of victory, but to his dismay, saw that Logi had not only eaten all of his food, but had consumed bones, plates, and trough too. So the giants claimed their first victory, shocked, but not beaten. This time young Gunther stepped forward, claiming that no giant was such a runner as he. The giant Hugi accepted the challenge, and the race began. Gunther ran swiftly, more swiftly than any man has done since, but upon reaching the halfway line, saw to his horror that Hugi had already finished. They raced once again and again, but each time Gunther was easily beaten. Utgarda Loki turned to Thor and asked what task he should take. Thor proudly stated that there was no other who could drink such as he. The king sent forth a drinking horn, telling the thunder god, "It is held that this horn is well drained if it is drunk off in one drink. But some drink it off in two. But no one is so poor a man at drinking that he fails to drink it off in three." Thor looked at the horn, which did not seem so big to him, though quite long. Putting it to his lips, he drew breath and gulped like never before. Looking at the top of the horn, Thor saw to his rage that the level had barely dropped. He tried once again, and again, and made the level of the liquid fall just enough to be noticeable, but no more. Laughing hysterically, the giants offered some easier task for Thor. The king sent out his own cat, asking if Thor was strong enough to lift it. Strongest of all the gods, and wearer of the belt which granted hyper strength, Thor felt sure that he at least could do this. Heaving with all of his divine might, the cat arched its back and eventually lifted just one paw off the ground. Laughing roundly at the god's effort, the king issued his final challenge. After Thor proclaimed that he would be readily wrestle any of the Jotun, Utgarda Loki sent forth his own nurse, a lady bent with extreme age, to spar with the god. The two struggled and strained, and the withered lady brought the Thunderer down onto one knee. Humbled and utterly humiliated, Thor and his party stormed out of the fortress. Once again in the wilderness, Thor saw Utgarda Loki approach him, telling the giant that he had shamed him. Thor was appalled with himself. The giant, however, smiled and explained. Skrymir had been him all along. When he has bound the provisions, he had done so with iron. And when Thor had struck him, he had struck the earth itself. Pointing out 3 large canyons in the wilderness, Utgarda Loki showed the god his folly. Whilst Loki was indeed a swift eater, his opponent in reality was fire, which devours all in its path. Whilst Gunther was indeed a powerful runner, his opponent was in reality thought, swifter than all else. Thor, though a formidable drinker, failed to see that the other end of the horn was in itself the ocean, impossible for a man to drain. The king's cat was in reality the world's serpent, Jolmingr, so vast that he could circle the world and take his own tail in his mouth. As for the ancient lady with whom the god had wrestled, she was old age herself, which overcomes all. Congratulating Thor on managing to raise the cat's paw and being forced onto one knee only by old age, Utgarda Loki departed, warning the gods never to set foot in his lands again. Thor has been tested and humiliated, but he has learned valuable lessons. Thus is the story of Thor and the King of the Jotuns. Thank you for listening to said tale. Feel free to discuss said lessons with your teacher, the noble Mrs. Crombie. Until next time, here's a good Scottish jig to get your feet a-moving. Until next time, Marasen Lead.